In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to a place at the table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table.
Welcome to a place at the table where we challenge the status quo and set out an agenda for change. My challenge is to the media. I'll be asking, are we satisfied to simply chase clicks, or are we ready to step up and amplify change?
Elsie, I'm certainly challenging the status quo on our ports and recommending that we decentralize and decongest them to achieve much needed efficiency.
My advocacy both sets out a challenge and an agenda for change. Like Elsie, I have the media on my mind. In fact, I'll be looking at pinning down the elusive reality of funding creatives.
Funke, I hear you. We are all in for change and progress. I'm spotlighting and even celebrating the move to let incarcerated people vote and saying every voice matters.
Zumah, surely looking forward to your advocacy. But if we are to survive as a nation, inclusion and unity are a must. I'll be echoing the words of the late Rodney King and asking, can't we all get along?
Growing up, I was exposed to various media, especially television and radio. My family bonded over laughter and learning from screens and radio waves. If it made us laugh and learn, then it was worthy content. This early exposure made me curious about the content we consume, people who create it, and how it shapes the minds of consumers. Then came social media, and I became active on Twitter, now X, and Facebook, and of course started my blog. It didn't take long to realize how many people depended on my content to make life-changing decisions. I saw firsthand how powerful content could be. I went on to start a podcast, have my own radio show and TV show, and of course produce content. The lines between new and traditional media soon became blurry for me. So I know the power of media and the sense of responsibility it carries. While we often say our society is losing its values and culture, media owners must take their fair share of the blame and rise to the challenge of salvaging what's left of our media space. Media plays a crucial role in informing, educating, entertaining, and shaping public opinion. It's frustrating to hear a media professional in 2025 talk about a divide between journalists, traditional media practitioners, and bloggers. This outdated mindset is why Nigeria's media powerhouses are still playing catch-up with platforms like Instablog and Tunde Ednut. They held on to the idea of being the better platform, not recognizing the rapid digital landscape. So my charge is to everyone. Whether your platform gets 100 or 10 million views, what do you amplify? Will you publish stories that challenge opinions, change opinions, or rather, Daniel Rega's word takes to chase clicks? Where do you draw the line? Can you commit to publishing at least 10% value-driven content daily? What standard operating procedures have you drawn for your organization? What Nigeria do you want to see tomorrow? It starts with you and the platform. We must break away from the shackles of chasing clicks and first to post. Authentic stories and voices must be heard and amplified.
Look, spot on. I completely align with your advocacy. And I'll start from chasing clicks. You know, for me, because my content is very different, I'm particular about menstrual health, leadership and stuff. Lately, I've been posting a lot about menstrual health. It will be counterproductive for me to evaluate what I'm doing based on the clicks and the comments I get on those posts, because I know that not everyone will leave a post. First of all, it's shattering silence. Again, it's anti establishment, you know, in terms of people keeping quiet about menstrual health. So I have turned my posts, you know, my page into a notice board. If you clicked, good for you. You don't engage, good for you. The important thing is that I'm creating value, I'm putting value for, I'm posting things that will benefit a lot of people. So whether you click or not is really not a big deal to me. And until we get to that point where we're not click dependent, our happiness is not dependent on the clicks and comments on your posts, you will not break free from people-pleasing tendencies. That's one. Secondly, I love the value-driven points you made. I love the fact that you're challenging us to amplify what will be beneficial to the people. I'm going to use the example of the Quam 2. Quam 2 and what happened to Comfort. You see the way people gleefully shared the nudes of semi-nude photos and videos of
They made a
Comfort.
gif out of it.
Goodness gracious, I had to do a post like, I don't understand. Is it that we're doing soft porn? Because there's nothing there to post. It's somebody's semi-nude. But people were amplifying it, to use the word that you use. What are you amplifying on your pages?
What's jumped out to me in all of this is, what do you amplify? A lot of people don't even know that they're amplifying certain content. So someone who put out a rage page, you now quote, tweet it and start saying, oh, can you see this? You are amplifying it. And you're also training your algorithms that these are the kind of things you are interested in. And some people will see something they disagree with, and then they will share it with other people. You're training your algorithm that, yes, these are the kind of things I find worthy enough to share people. So it's very important as a digital media user, to be mindful of what you share, what you quote, even the things that you find outrageous. And so there are ways to share without amplifying. You can take a screenshot, that is like a less amplifying way. You are not calling attention to the account, you are not calling attention to the post, but you're still making your point about what is going on there. Growing up, right, our media content, it was pretty straightforward. There is always a villain and a hero, but these days, no lines. You see content, everybody is a villain. You now start wondering, like, okay, what precisely am I supposed to take away from this content? I am very intentional about the kind of media I consume and the kind of media I amplify. And then I had a friend over recently, and I was watching the show, and she was like, Zumah, you shouldn't watch this show. This does not glorify who you are. This is not the kind of content you want to internalize. That the kind of things you consistently watch, you expose yourself to, at the end of the day, shapes your mindset.
Absolutely.
So as organizations, as individuals, as parents, as citizens, it is important for us to be mindful of the kind of content we consume, because the media content we consume shapes our society as it is. And some of the Nigerians are bad. Look at the quality of movies we are producing. Look at the kind of skits we see. You hardly see any skit that glorifies anything positive. It's either prostitution or witchcraft, or, it's just a lot of things. That's it for me, Elsie.
So the reality is that, today, media and publishing has been democratized. Everybody can say whatever they want to say. They have a voice. We're not regulated. Freedom is more expressive now than just what the editor thinks that everybody should read. And that's what we see, that because traditional media has evolved from the mainstream right now to what we see now in social media, where everybody has a voice, everybody has a platform. The challenge we have now is a challenge of regulation. The question I ask, for instance, traditional media is regulated. So you have the NBC. There are rules, there are codes, broadcasting codes that you have to keep. Okay, I think the NBC, I think the Press Council also regulates them. The question is, who regulates social media? Who regulates your podcast? Okay, when you ask that question, you begin to get answers like, okay, maybe it's the Cybercrime Act. That's not, that's a law.
Or maybe the NCC.
Maybe the NCC, maybe NITA. So you begin to see that there's no clear regulatory framework that regulates, social media. And it's because of the unique challenge, like we have talked about, the algorithms and things like this. So we're going to have to come to a point where we ask ourselves, to what level can we regulate freedom? Because social media represents freedom of expression. I can say what I want to say without being censored.
There's a cybercrime.
Yes, the Cybercrimes Act.
Yes.
So the challenge we have is, how do we balance freedom with responsibility and accountability. And I think that's a debate we must have to move forward.
So, you know that social media has made things accessible, it has broken barriers. And just as we were saying about traditional media having some censorship, you don't have that with social media. And for me, I don't. How much do you want to regulate? Because now, if you find out people say, okay, people don't interact anymore, it's just like how people were talking on the streets or in the marketplace or at the newspaper vendor in the past. Now they do it on their computers, and if you are lucky, it's not everybody that has a high followership. But now, about your question, are you just you want to create value or you don't want to get clicks? What is value? Okay, what is value to you might not be value to me, because we cannot even use regulation to solve this, because like what you said, skits about witchcraft is not a crime. Skits about prostitution is not a crime. Okay, as in the Cybercrime Act comes into play when a criminal
when you defame somebody.
Yeah, for things like that, that's those are crimes. But a lot of things that we see that we might not take as having value addition are not actually crimes. And don't forget that there is also the part of money making. People want to make money
as influencers.
Yeah. Also, people want fame. Now, then why I want to go back to the issue of value is this. For example, unrelated, Big Brother Nigeria, people say, oh, will you ban the show? And I ask myself, how is this show different from our Nigerian music videos? We all dance to them, we sing to them, we play them at our weddings. If you look at the Nigerian music video, how is it different from Big Brother House? So these are the questions. We need to ask ourselves a lot of questions about what
That's a very controversial thing to say.
Interesting take, you know.
Are you saying that because I see that a lot of things within Big Brother has to do with nudity?
Regardless, I think that whatever it is, we have to still find a way to maintain our decorum, right? And in terms of regulations, there's a challenge there, even from the regulator's point of view, because each time they approach it, they're not approaching it to solve this problem. They're approaching it to protect themselves and be able to reduce. When you have that kind of approach, you are almost never going to solve the problem, right? But we either see ourselves as victims of a nation in decay or authors of a society that is ripe for change. The choice is ours.
Yes, Elsie, times change. And I'm saying that it's time we take seriously the issue of optimizing our ports, and all ports mustn't lead to Lagos. Apapa, Tinkan, and Lekki ports, all in Lagos, cumulatively handle 85% of Nigeria's total container traffic, with Apapa and Tinkan being the busiest. Thus, it is no surprise that Nigerian ports rank low based on different indicators for port efficiency, with entrenched problems of delays, unofficial charges, stretched and outdated infrastructure, with technical breakdowns and security concerns. With Nigeria's large population, it is clear that improvements are required, as those involved in shipping or living in Lagos know too well. With every problem comes opportunities, and this is one clear opportunity that has been ignored for too long. Note that Nigeria has other ports, such as in Calabar, Akwa Ibom, Port Harcourt, Warri, as well as 9 states with direct access to the Atlantic Ocean. Like many dysfunctional things in Nigeria, when potential solutions are pointed out, authorities begin to reel out challenges and technical difficulties associated with the solutions. Citizens do not need to know technical details about dredging, infrastructure development, and so on. There are experts to tackle those. Citizens demand visionary leadership, strategic planning, and political will, as a case study of the United Arab Emirates demonstrates. UAE has one of the most successful examples of man-made deep-sea ports in the world. It is also noteworthy that ports are not simply for serving the country directly, but an opportunity to serve as hubs to other regions of the world, just as in the case with the UAE. The UAE has a population of just over 11 million, yet has some of the most efficient ports in the world. Nigeria sure needs to diversify income generation as much as possible, and this has to move beyond being a cliche. Nigeria must take seriously the optimization of other ports outside of Lagos, development of multimodal transport systems, and not simply the construction of port terminals. Public-private partnerships, as in the case of the Lekki port, must be encouraged. Decentralizing port authority and governance and management to subnational levels must also be considered.
You see, the Lagos port, you said we should leave there, and those are even the ones I want to talk about, right? Because when you look at the state of infrastructure in the ports, we have the Apapa port is more than 100 years old, the Tinkan port is more than 48 years old. And you look how dated the infrastructure are, and that is a huge part of what constitutes the inefficiencies at the port. So for the ports, even the current one that we have that is, that is currently functional, they are not very efficient. So there has to be a significant infrastructural upgrade and also modernization of the entire porting system. Also, they need to adopt technology because I don't know why we are still manually offloading and loading what's it called, as at this time as it is. Automate a large part of the process, reduce human interaction, and most importantly, corruption and security. I mean, at every point, if you're trying to bring in anything through the seaport, there is always someone waiting you carry. They are even worse than policemen. And beyond that, even after paying all the waiting you carried, you're not guaranteed that you have everything that you ordered for, particularly people who are shipping in cars. You see some different parts of the cars would have gotten missing before you even finish. The issues are plenty.
There is inefficiency because when you look at it, you're right when you say that the Western ports, Apapa, Tinkan, Lekki, account for large proportion. I'm not sure it accounts for 85%, but I concede that it accounts for
a significant
portion of our of our container traffic, and that is what sometimes basically leads to the inefficiency. But it's about economics. It's about business. The question you should ask is, why do shippers prefer to come to Lagos? So it's not like the options are not there. There's a INEC port, there's a Warri port, there's a Port Harcourt port. It's there. But the shippers prefer to come to Lagos. Why do they prefer to come to Lagos? Because Lagos is the economic nerve of Nigeria. Most of the manufacturing entities
in the proximity
are within and around Lagos. And if you want to ship, you will ship to the closest port to your business. So if you're saying a company, for instance, that has its operations in Nigeria, in Lagos, you go and dock in Port Harcourt, it doesn't make economic sense. So at the end of the day, it boils down to two things: infrastructure of moving items from the port down to where it's needed. And I think that when you think about it, the subnationals around those areas, the question is, what is the level of capital formation and businesses there? What's the nature of manufacturing activities that will prompt them to do a lot of, import? Because if there's a whole lot there that is happening around that axis, trust me, shippers, it's about naira and kobo. It's about, economics of scale. They look at it and they say, okay, it's cheaper for me. Because when I ship, I don't just want to ship containers in, I want to ship containers out. So at the end of the day, it's about economics. So I am for, let's resolve the inefficiencies, but let's not discount the fact that we need to also ensure that the subnationals and the communities, the states around those ports that exist, the alternatives that exist, are also economically viable, and there's a whole lot of economic activities to prompt and push naturally, not artificially, because that's what they've been trying to do all this while, artificially push it, but naturally, economically push traffic to those other ports.
But yeah, yes, we have Calabar Port, River Port, Delta. It's all there, and it needs to happen naturally. But I would, just to what you said, I just want to mention my state. I mean, I'm always proud of that, Abia State. a lot is happening there. And if that trajectory can go on for the next 8 years, 10 years, I think the difference will be very clear, right? But back to infrastructure, you said development of multimodal transport systems and not simply the construction of port terminals. I think it's spot on. And what came to mind is the question I would always ask when it comes to the fact that we borrow. Everybody will say, yes, a country must borrow. There's no country that is not owing or borrowing. But my own question is always, what are we doing with the monies we're borrowing? Are we using it to build infrastructures that would actually impact the economy, I say Nigeria is a business, impact the business of Nigeria, right? And thereby, in the next 5 to 10 years, you can easily say these loans can actually be paid back by the infrastructures that you have built. So the thought behind it for me is we need to do better. These things have been spotlighted as much as certain states are stepping up. We've had conversations on this table where we talk about governors having to begin to think about how to be self-sufficient. If you think from that perspective and not always looking for how to get allocation from the center, right, it begins to also make you look at how to make or for lack of a better word, sort of emulate what's happening in Abia State and other states that are trying to do things to stand on their own, right? And then you can begin to help us get where we want to get to. But if we're not doing that, it will still be a case of these conversations are happening. Like he said, if it's not efficient for me to dock in Delta State, I will dock where I have to dock because my business comes first and it's about Naira and Kobo. So yes, spot on. But it's a very, I like this kind of conversation because right now it's not about the center, it's not just about local government, it touches everybody. We have to come together to decide what we want as a people and for Nigeria, not just in the immediate, in the next 10, 20 years, what should happen and what should we do now for that effect that we want to see in the next 20 years?
I mean, what's not to like about this advocacy? It's about time we highlighted what's going on in our ports. I like that you looked at port efficiency ranking of Nigeria as a whole. That's pretty much what this is about, and benchmarked with international best practices. Underutilization of our ports, I think, is a key policy failure, which will necessitate us reimagining other major cities in Nigeria where we have ports. And also looking at other business hubs in Nigeria, like Aba, Onitsha, we look at Calabar, One, and really focus on how do we bring them up to that point where people go there for their businesses instead of everybody coming to Lagos. Then again, if you look at decentralizing port governance, developing multimodal transport links, and you look at the adoption of tech, you see that this is where, in addition to UAE that you mentioned, that's where Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire have edges over Nigeria. Again, port efficiency is not just a function of policy. It's also about custom processes, regulatory coordination, regulatory coordination. And as I said earlier, tech options. I like that you said citizens do not need to know the technical details about dredging and all of that. What we need is visionary leadership, the political will to make a difference to what we have now. And truly, we need to do better.
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say, the center also has to let some things go. It's not about asking the states to do more. The center keeps holding on to certain things like maritime governance. So where we refuse to explore the way forward and instead seem stuck in unproductive ways, should we not be classed as enemies of progress?
One day, forward ever, backward never. You might be interested in my blueprint on the way forward with regards to financing the creative industry. Earlier this week, Nigerian creatives gathered for a critical conversation themed Financing as Catalyst for a Thriving Creative Economy. Nigeria's creative industry is vast. It includes film, music, performing arts, fashion and design, literature, publishing, gaming, digital content, and media. According to UNCTAD, the global creative economy generates over $2 trillion annually. In 2024, it reports that creative services accounted for 19% of all global service exports, up from 12% a decade ago. It is one of the fastest growing sectors in emerging economies. Convener of the summit and publisher QEDNG, Olumide Yonda, says Nigeria's creative industry, the second largest employer in the country, contributes approximately $5.6 billion to our GDP, and that the federal government's goal to grow this to $100 billion by 2030 is ambitious but achievable if we build honest partnerships and scale investment. Now, financing creative industries is high risk, high reward. It demands upfront investment in talent development, production, marketing, and distribution. Again, creative ideas need capital to move from concept to reality. But many creative entrepreneurs remain informal with little access to structured funding. And despite the Bank of Industry's $200 million fund for Nollywood, the Central Bank's Creative Industries Financing Initiative, the Nigeria Export Promotion Council's support for fashion and craft exports, and the Lagos Creative Industry Initiative, the street is not feeling these interventions. Creatives call them audio money. As moderator of one of these sessions, I wanted to know how Minister Hannatu Musa Musawa's ambitious 8-point plan and 4-pronged intervention aimed at employing 2 million people in the sector was faring 2 years after. The feelers, beautiful on paper. Udeme Ufot, MFR, Group MD, SO, and U, and chairman of the summit said, without access to sustainable and strategic funding, creativity struggles to scale. Ideas remain trapped in notebooks, studios shut down, talent goes untrained, and potential remains just that, potential. He says, when ideas meet funding, when storytellers meet investors, when policy meets purpose, magic happens. And so to diversify Nigeria's economy and empower our youth, investing in creativity is a low-hanging fruit that can transform our bulging youth demographics into a great national asset.
You see, you mentioned many government initiatives, and
There are more.
And I like how you summarize it as audio money, because those are what they really are. Without robust digital processes for transparency and accountability, let's just forget it. And let no one tell us that it's not possible to make these things digital. Banks are doing it, okay? As we said, we the citizens don't need to know the nitty-gritties. You can make these things mostly digital for those who don't have the technical know-how. There will be a hybrid system, but until we can see clearly a transparent system where you apply for things like this $200 million and you are able to key in without having to do too many of going over to a place, putting in applications, holding meetings. Some of these things can be done virtually, and we have virtual capacity building sessions to even train people on how to access these interventions.
Yeah.
Then finally, even where we say it's high risk, that is where government comes in. It doesn't have to be a loan. There can be grants. Okay, grants are not expected to be paid back. Yes, it's high risk, but if it's going to have the kind of effect it's having on our economy, why not?
Yes, so spot on. I like the conclusion. I think the conclusion really is the solution to diversify Nigeria's economy, which is something we must do, and empower you to invest in creativity. Creativity is a low-hanging fruit, and that can transform our economy. And that's the word, investing. That's the key. That's the key issue. And I think that here we need to find the trainings that we need to have with these people at this technical financial education of how to project, structure their funding. In your advocacy, I noticed when you were talking about the the interventions they were talking about. You have Bank of Industry, $200 million.
CBN.
Government. CBN, government. Nigeria Export Promotion, government. Lagos State, government.
We have more governments. The banks are there as well.
So where you really want to be is not where government is the one that is intervening. You want the business community. You want private equity. You want banks. You want investors, angel investors like myself to say, you know what? I'm throwing money into that thing.
Right.
Okay? And I think that to get there, we really need to have... I'm not saying that the opportunities are not there. I'm just saying that we have not been able to create it in a way that will be appealing to that sector, and we need to do that work.
No sector has bloomed simply by government intervention. What the creative industry needs to, what they need to actively work on is how to articulate the business side of their process, such that they become attractive to institutional investors, to angel investors, to people like you and I. So someone was telling me, oh, you should come and buy a catalog. I'm like, okay, what is a catalog? And the person broke it down. Okay, so how do I make money back? They said, well, the song may blow you. I was like, I don't understand.
That's why it's high risk. So you want to,
it may blow. Wow. So I'm just going to buy it, and just hope that maybe somebody will play it somewhere and then it will go viral and that's how I'm going to make my money back. No, I'd rather buy land than be looking at it, So that's again, the risk is quite high, and beyond the high risk, it's kind of informal, and it's very difficult to invest in the informal space, particularly for non-tangible products. So at this point, it's just governments that we can rely on. I would like to highlight what MBA Africa, Music Business Academy Africa, is doing, particularly for players in the music industry. They try to train them on the business side of music. So you're not just a random artist. You have an idea of the key people you need to put all of this together and make a viable business out of it. So that is so we need more creative incubators. Yeah. That's the word. Such that they can formalize it and make them attractive and interesting to investors.
But speaking of what you said in terms of, I've heard the word intangible a lot, right? But I don't think that when it comes to seeking investment for creative industries, you don't have the numbers. Like you said, they need to be educated on how to present that number, present the business, and ensure that they can convince people like Zumah to invest. Now, there's a lady called Ijoma Ona. I encountered her when I did a program at Pan Atlantic University. It was a media entrepreneurship program. So definitely the goal is for you to understand where you can invest and the business side of media and all that has to do with media. And she came in to break down how the possibility of actually pulling people together to be able to invest in movies, in things like this, the kind of numbers they want to see, the kind of things you can put into a document and speak to a numbers guy, and he will understand where you're coming from. There is the business side of creativity, and that is what so many people are not interested in getting to learn. Because just like every other part of business, just like if you come to us now in the corporate world, when they tell you about numbers, say, go and meet finance, we are not interested. It's the same thing that is happening in the creative industry. We are not interested in that number side. We just want to be creative and move on. And which is why I also like that we now have people that are getting serious in certain careers in the creative industry. That's right. So the legal partner, we have not a lot, but we have a good number of entertainment lawyers. Yes. Now we also need to have lawyers that understand, or even the finance people that understand the movie space. Because I have seen people who have raised money. They went there with a document and investment happened because you are getting numbers from the cinema. Sure. Yeah, even if your movie is a YouTube movie, you are getting numbers from YouTube. You can project to say, if my movie does 10 million views, we are going to get XYZ amount of USD into our bank accounts. So it is doable. They need to, think from that perspective. And what was I going to add? Yes, the digitalization you talked about is, I don't get it because it's not rocket science. We have tried, I know that you've definitely maybe tried to apply for grants outside Nigeria, right? Creative industry grants. There are documents that are just standard that when you request from a creative, when they provide it, you know that, yes, they know what they are doing. things that break down the schedule of your production, what you want to do. You know those documents. And it's not a lot. It's just maybe 2 or 3. You put it together. They review it. They reach out to you. Maybe have one Zoom conversation, and they know that this person understands the direction and what they want to do, and you get your grant. So why can't we implement that as well here? Because a number of Nigerians apply for this grant. So we cannot say we are not digital savvy or that we don't know what we are doing. So a lot is happening in that space. People are just latching on corruption and greed and holding the money for certain people, you know, and then creating, you know, that's what is happening. But like we said earlier, corruption is just...
Constructive criticism has at its heart the desire to build up. It should therefore come with a vision of development and progress.
Funke, I'm certainly an optimist. I hope I'm not being precipitate in celebrating the inclusion of inmates in the voting process. The recent proclamation by the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to allow incarcerated people to vote is a monumental and deeply commendable step forward for Nigeria. This decision, a culmination of years of advocacy, marks a historic victory for inclusivity. It boldly challenges a long-standing practice that unjustly disenfranchised a significant portion of our population. For too long, over 53,000 inmates awaiting trial who are legally presumed innocent until proven guilty have been denied their most basic civil rights. This was a profound contradiction to our Constitution and our democratic ideals. INEC's decision to rectify this is a powerful affirmation that citizenship is a right, not a privilege to be suspended without conviction. Beyond the legal and moral imperative, this move is a strategic investment in our nation's future. Granting voting rights to inmates encourages civic responsibility and serves as a vital tool for rehabilitation, preparing individuals for successful reintegration into society. This is not a radical or untested idea. Nigeria now joins nations like South Africa, Kenya, and Ghana, which have successfully demonstrated that voting can be conducted securely and fairly within correctional facilities. This alignment with our African peers and global standards elevates Nigeria's democratic standing and shows our commitment to an inclusive democracy where every voice matters. The task ahead now is to ensure seamless implementation. We urge INEC and the Nigerian Correctional Service to collaborate closely on a clear and efficient framework, establish secure polling units, conduct thorough voter registration drives and civic education campaigns, and ensure the transparency of the process. This proclamation is more than a policy change. It is a declaration of democratic maturity. It proves that Nigeria is committed to building a democracy where the promise of justice and equality extends to all its citizens. I wholeheartedly endorse this decision and look forward to its successful implementation, ushering in a new era of inclusive governance and civic participation.
Just, you know, I don't have a question. I just have a question. Is this, the amendment they're looking at, is it just for incarcerated...
awaiting trials?
Just awaiting trials or convicted?
No, not convicted.
So it doesn't cover convicted,
yes,
it's just awaiting trial.
Awaiting trial.
So the amendment they're looking at is in the Electoral Act, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Borrow your words. I think you are precipitate in some way. So overall, it's a good thing. Let's just get that clear. And I like the angle about reintegration into society. That was quite thoughtful, and it should be encouraged by all means. However, where we part ways is where you say that this demonstrates commitment to inclusive democracy,
democratic maturity,
and that this is a proof
that our democracy has matured.
We are now committed to justice and equality to all citizens. Because of this, no, I don't think we are going to let them off that easy. There will have to be a lot more demonstrated in the implementation of the Electoral Act, in the conduct of elections, in the announcement of results, in the resolution of electoral malpractices. Okay, I think they have a lot more to prove. This is a good thing, but I don't think it translates into the
electoral
to what we are trying
maturity.
Yeah.
When it comes to democracy in Nigeria, it's neither here nor there, right? If we look at INEC themselves now, first question, why do we have 53,000 people who are waiting trial? Why? What is happening in the judicial system? We've had people who have been awaiting trials for years. So first, what is going on? Please, if our democracy is maturing, why are people there that long without being represented and being given the human rights they deserve, right? That's on one part. On the second part is INEC. So last election, I mean, I'm not the numbers person, he's the numbers guy, but I hear that we had about 93 million Nigerians registered to vote, have you?
Yes.
Only 25 million people, or about 25 million people voted. Now, that 25 million, at least I voted. I know what happened, even from the presidential to the governors, I participated, right? And just those 25 million that came out, a lot of people were still disenfranchised. INEC could not get to the polling unit on time. They could not accreditate you on time. A lot of issues happened, and we had people who, at the end of the day, said they've closed. You just carry yourself and go back home. It's not that you did not vote because you did not come out. You did not vote because INEC could not accommodate you. But the same INEC is very interested in counting the votes of people that are waiting trial, right? As much as, yes, it sounds really nice, it sounds really good, but I'm questioning the intent of this policy or this, I don't know what it's called now, that is being pushed. I don't want to say everything with my mouth, but I am questioning the intent behind this conversation. And that is all I'm going to say.
Well, voting is a fundamental human right.
Absolutely.
And I see that this is becoming a strong global trend, even though the United States is still an outlier. They have just about 3 states with this sort of law: Maine, Vermont, and I think Washington, D.C. But by and large, there are many more countries in Europe, Australia, and all those places coming into making decisions like this. Well, there was a case in 2019 that brought about this consideration whereby 72,000 people incarcerated in prison were, given the green light to vote. And I'm glad that there is an amendment now and a proclamation, to use your word, to say, let it be. So in letting it be, I hope, and this is all I have to say, that this will make politicians to begin to address the idea of criminal justice reform, looking at the conditions in our prisons, because if they're voting for you, then they have a right to reforms from you, for you to look at what they really, truly need. I hope that we will have lesser jailbreaks, because it being their fundamental human right to vote, you agreeing that they should vote means they're contributing to your victory as a politician. It means a constituency that you need to also focus on. I agree with you, Elsie. People outside have not even finished voting. Nevertheless, constitutional reform or prison reform or criminal justice reforms should include that people who are being held without trials should just be allowed to go home. There's no point in voting from the prison when you can vote from your home.
While we applaud the right vision and monitor its implementation, we are playing our part as active citizens in the push for change.
Zumah, surely the primary responsibility of a citizen is to respect and promote the rights of other citizens, to live and thrive equally and equitably. Everything else flows from there. April 29, 1992, the jury in the trial of the early PD officers that viciously assaulted Rodney King returned a not guilty verdict. This led to days of widespread riots in LA. In response to the violence, Rodney King gave a press conference where he made the now famous quote, "Can't we all just get along?" A statement coming from the man who was the victim of the brutal assault became one of the most quoted and iconic lines of that period, symbolizing a call for unity and non-violence. I reflect on these words today as I see the polarizing rhetoric on the timeline from Nigerians. Every topic is discussed and analyzed from ethnic, sectarian, or partisan points of view. Years of living together, trading together, marrying together, worshiping together, schooling together, and working together seem not to matter, as the rhetoric of hate and bigotry seems to be the order of the day. The situation is not helped by technology, as the algorithm seems to ensure that people are nested firmly in a sectarian bubble. We forget that what makes this country great is not just our size, but our diversity, which is why unity in diversity was a fundamental principle in the call for independence by our founding fathers. This is why today I call on all of us, regardless of our tribes and stripes, to forge an agenda for peace and unity. That agenda must include a plan to correct all forms of systemic inequality, to protection of life and properties, and yes, the respect and preservation of indigenous rights and culture. It is a call for all those with influence, from the president to governors, to legislators, to ministers, including their heads, traditional rulers, men and women of the clergy, parents and online influencers, to use their powerful platforms to be agents of peace in words, in tone, and in action. While politicians may think it is in their political interest to divide, we all should know that we have the agency to follow a different path. So just like Rodney King, I make the same appeal. Can't we all just get along?
I feel like from the beginning of humanity, from the start of humanity, people generally just don't get along. And for people to get along for whatsoever reason, there has to be unity of purpose. And in Nigeria, we don't have that. We don't have anything unifying us. We have more things that divide us than the, I was about saying than the things that unify, but we literally don't have anything that unify us beyond the fact that we share the same geographical location that was designed by a white man. So again, maybe we should embrace the fact that, I wouldn't say get along, but more like we should be fair and equitable to one another. We don't necessarily have to get along, but as far as we are able to, we're respectful of one another. We also focus on the things that bind us together, because the things that bind us together, they are not particularly things that unify us, because we are together, we are part of a country. So we need to make the country work. So what are the things I need to do? What are the things she needs to do? What are the things you need to do? So as far as we are delivering our bit in making the country better.
Not agreed, I don't have anything unifying us. In fact, you mentioned so many: intermarriage, worshiping together, schooling together, living together. If not for those things, I think this country would have been maybe like DRC or worse now, like will have been on fire. So there's actually a lot unifying us. And on a lighter note, I like that you acknowledge our heroes past for preaching unity in diversity. So where do we now get you wrong? It's all when it comes to politics. Because you see, when it comes to politics, whether we like it or not, we're Nigerians, whether you don't see it in public, the Christian clique will say this one is a Christian candidate. The Muslim clique will say this one is a Muslim candidate. The Yoruba will say this. And it is usually fueled by the politicians themselves. All right? Not like coming from the people. But somehow, they get willing listeners. Why? Because a lot of people lack education. Even some of the educated persons are poorly educated. So they cannot get it then. But it gets complicated. We cannot always blame the poorly educated or uneducated. There is a subtle endorsement of this when we have a gentleman agreement of it is 8 years for the South, then to go back 8 years to the North. Subtly, it's still in us, that there is not, and if you look at it, it's only when it comes to politics, appointments in office, who gets a favor from an MD in an office. But when it comes to price of food in the market, who you will marry, who you hang out with, we are united. The national team, like the football teams, Super Eagles play, everybody is. So I think that politics keeps dividing us, and I don't see it changing anytime soon because, as I said, it's very complicated.
It's an amazing advocacy. Thank you for talking about this. And when you were speaking, that Zumah, you said something about respect, right? And I think that if we have respect for one another, certain utterances won't even be made. We won't have to be having this conversation. So even if that's the only part from what you said that I'm picking, respect for the next person, respect and value humanity, and just care for the next person, then we won't be where we are now. But you rightly put it. You said while politicians may think it's in their political interest to divide, we all should know. And that is what they think, which is why they subtly endorse it. We can recall what happened with the whole Yoruba Ronu conversation. Even when well-meaning influencers that you mentioned came out to say this should not be the line of conversation, at the time, I remember clearly Governor Sanwo-Olu, who was running at the time, was very active on social media. However, he refused, that's the word that we use, he refused to put out all those plenty statements he was putting out. He never put out one to condemn what those that were championing the whole Yoruba Ronu conversation was doing. So that was deliberate, and they know that it favors them, which is why they keep doing it. And unfortunately or fortunately for them and everyone involved, I really hope that you already said it, there's poor education, even when there's education is very poor, right? If you understand, you even realize that this became a divide between husband and wives. The husband is Yoruba, the wife is Igbo, and then there's a problem. Right now, everybody's beginning to mend fences after the election to say, we cannot break our home because of election, right, or politics. But at the end of the day, that happened, and none of the people that you would regard as the political forerunner at the time was able to come out to, in plain words, not trying to use politics or diplomacy to condemn what has happened. And I like that you have called them out, clearly mentioned everyone. Hopefully they are listening. Hopefully they understand the gravity of what they are doing, because a lot more actually brings us together than they are trying to divide us. And that is why we are still standing.
Well, I like the powerful parallel. It's a powerful parallel, Rodney King's 1992, appeal with what you're putting forth today. Nigeria has basic fault lines, ethnic, religious, and partisan. And what we all have been doing is reinforcing these fault lines, and is not helping us. Diversity is a strength. But we're not exploiting, that strength. And algorithms, just as you've said, is amplifying the tone and agency and reinforcing echo chambers. So we need to reframe diversity as an asset rather than a burden. We need to talk to our political and religious elites, because they're also reinforcing these fault lines and promoting this diversity as a burden narrative that we have. What I need for us to do as a collective at the table today is to look at how do we bridge this divide, to move from exhortation that your advocacy gives to a roadmap, to say to the National Orientation Agency that, you know what, this is, this is a challenge. I like the man at the National Orientation Agency now, because at least he's proactive.
So,
You're seeing that he's making, unlike the passivity of past administrators of National Orientation Agency. I mean, why do we have that agency if we cannot utilize it for a time like this? So I think moving forward, creating a roadmap starts with tasking the National Orientation Agency to see how we can begin to mend maps, how we can use our diversity as a strength, how we can go back to Western region, Eastern region, Northern region, the Central, and, work, pull ourselves up from there, and then come together as we do in football and put a front to say, we are Nigerians.
This connects with your advocacy when you were talking about responsible content, where we all sit down and look at, okay, what are we churning out? Sometimes when you look at what is coming out from on the timeline, from very influential voices.
Exactly.
You get scared that, look, I mean, do we really want a country? And I think that we all must balance, like I said, freedom with responsibility.
That's right.
We have a responsibility to change the rhetoric, to calm down what we see online, and ensure that we have a country where our children doesn't have to look at the surname of the people they engage with to be able to engage. That's the country we want. Until we appreciate that the good we desire for ourselves is the good others equally desire and are entitled to, we aren't ready for the tough conversations that are necessary for nation building. I take it you are ready since you've joined us at the table. See you again, same time, next week. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us.
Goodbye.